So welcome everyone to today's Westminster Business Council event, how to generate revenue from events. For this topic, there really is only one speaker. So I'm really fantastic to have Michelle Fanus with us from the conference director. I'm really excited to have us with us today. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Sophie. I'm one of the team at Westminster Business Council. And for those of you that don't know WBC, we are a business support agency. We've got around 3,500 members, and we support them with access to content, intelligence, ideas, and connections. And we help you to meet your next customer. So in other words, we are the human face of LinkedIn. And we do run a lot of events ourselves, of course, digitally, and looking forward to getting back to the physical environment. So as I say, I'm going to be taking lots of notes today about that. But as an organisation, it's not just our job to help people find opportunities within the business community. We do also have a real passion for helping young people in our local community too. And for those of you who are familiar with what I say in these sessions, Westminster is often overlooked as a borough that needs help supporting local communities. So we're trying to address that imbalance. And we do that through the work of the Ben Hughes Memorial Fund. And there's some more information about that on our website. I'll post that out to you shortly. Just a little housekeeping. I think we are all on mute, and we'll probably say like that whilst Michelle is giving us her pearls of wisdom. But after her session, please feel free to ask questions and pick her brains. And then what we're going to do is go out into networking rooms so that you can make the most of speaking to people on the call today. So Michelle, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Brilliant. I wondered whether it was okay for me to unmute myself or, yeah. Hi, everybody. Great to see you all. I think I've met quite a few of you before. My name's Michelle Fanus. I'm the founder of the conference director. I've been in the events industry since 2001. I started out in working for very niche conference companies, small conference companies, and then moved into sort of more corporate media sort of style, people like UBM, Informa, people like that some of you may have heard of, that do really large scale expos, lots of joint venture sort of start type things, and set up my business Dynamic Events actually 10 years ago, and then recently rebranded from the lockdown, focusing more on sort of strategy, revenue generation, sort of unlocking revenue and looking at sort of content and developing compelling content. And a couple of the clients I'm working with at the moment, I'm an Africa specialist. So I've started working with the Economist Group. This was earlier this year. That's how I've worked all through the lockdown, in fact. They do a huge bilateral trade conference in Dubai called the Global Business Forum, and I'm the program editor for that. So reaching out to speakers, developing the conference program, hot topics, that kind of thing. It's an amazing high level conference with heads of state and investors, ministers, etc. So it's a fantastic project. So yeah, so that's me. So I've worked for a startup event. My clients are event organizers, startup event organizers, solopreneurs, right through to sort of FTSE sort of 100 event organizers. So, and yeah, and typically my clients are publishers. I have quite a lot of publishing clients, so have a lot of knowledge around transitioning sort of publishing content and knowledge and audiences into events. So that's sponsorship, revenue generation, and turning kind of subscribers into event attendees and advertisers into sponsors, if that makes sense. So yeah, so that's me. So I wanted to just talk to you about today around sponsorship, because I've done quite a bit around that, and I have quite a lot of experience of unlocking sponsorship, especially attending meetings with sponsor prospects, telling them about content and how they can be involved in the event and kind of putting across the value proposition for events. So I know quite a lot around sort of the understanding around sponsors and what they think, what their expectations are, etc., and how that kind of locks into the events that we shape. So I've got a few slides, I say a few, probably about 10 slides, to just go through with you. And then really it's about discussion. I didn't want to kind of talk too much, just a few ideas. around where we've been as an industry, where we are, the impact of COVID, and some thoughts and some explanation of what sponsorship and revenue is. So I hope I don't bore you too much, and then we can just have a conversation and a discussion. So if I share my screen with you, I can show you my slides. Okay. Can you see that? Yeah.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Right. I think you've got the wrong view, haven't you? Let's change that. Sorry. Faffing there. Bear with me for 2 seconds. How about that? Can you see that? That work?
Not change your view. Just unplug your screen.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. So yeah, these are just some of the ideas that I'm just going to throw at you today. So the impact of COVID on our industry, what live, virtual and hybrid is, what I call NPC events, or where I've written about this in our industry press. So I'll share a little bit about that with you, what I call NPC events, different revenue streams that sit around events, and then what I see as the way forward. So this was us probably about a year ago when we discovered that there was going to be a ban on events. Absolute shockwaves through the industry. What the hell happens now? Yeah, so what we realize is that we have a huge dependency on live events. No, really. The pandemic changed the events landscape forever. Never be the same again, but the virtual event genie is truly out of the bottle. Not able to gather in person, so we had to find a way to pause, pivot, and embrace the whole online space. Probably about maybe 10, 15 years ago now, I sort of did my first sort of hybrid stroke virtual event. Absolutely hated it. We hated it with a vengeance. Our industry, we didn't like them at all. But look, that was our saving grace for 2020. And it's something like 75 million attendees attended 1 million events, according to Eventbrite in 2020. So yeah, I would say we very much have embraced the online world, and we have an amazing plethora of different online platforms at our disposal as well that we can take advantage of. Right, so brave new world of events is truly virtual. The industry was valued at something like $1.1 trillion in 2018, projected to $2.33 trillion, so double by 2026. COVID has stunted that growth, but I would definitely say that the virtual world has definitely helped us to get back on track. And I think from whispers in the industry does tell me that we're going to bounce back with definitely a vengeance. And then just a bit of, we've done quite a lot of different polls and surveys and things. 96% of event marketers believe that hybrid will be the way forward for 2021. So, but what's hybrid? So live events are in person, so shaking hands face to face. Virtual is completely the opposite of that, and that can take in the form of just an online meeting like the ones that we're in now, right through to other platforms that where you can create personas and avatars, and it's literally a 3D experience. That's what in the virtual sense, what that can mean in its full capacity. And hybrid is a combination of that. So it's called hybrid or omni-channel or multi-channel events, and that's where a little bit like the broadcast, a bit like TV. So you might have 100, 150, maybe even 50 people sitting in a room together at an event, and then the rest of the audience is online. And then you have to create that integration between the online audience and the in-person audience. So that's technically what a hybrid is, and that's going to be our interesting next challenge or next phase for our industry. And how do we do that, and are there any good examples? But quite frankly, the broadcast industry have been doing it for years, so we should really be consulting them. Right, so this is the first evolution of our industry. We've got what we call virtual event professional or online event professionals. That's me, a certified virtual event professional, and just did a sort of thing. It was a 10-module course with the Virtual Events Institute. Fascinating course. So that's where we are now. That's where our industry has evolved to. So what I would call where we are now, where we need to be as an industry or as organisers, is very much underpinned by doing business in a slightly different way. This sort of thing of hopping from one event to the next and having a random event dotted in the calendar is not at all sustainable. And I think coronavirus has taught us that we need to have a cohesive collection of events or collection of content divided into different experiences, one of which is events. And as I said, our industry has been totally reliant on live events, and that's one of the things that I think a number of organisers have realised, that they need to transition, not be so reliant on events, and create different forms of content. Also, we do have responsibility around the planet as well. Unnecessary flights and travel is also, we're really under the spotlight as well as an industry, that we need to kind of change the way that we do business. So I would say that it's important for event organisers or event designers or event owners to create events that are firstly mission focused. So that's dealing with, you're creating a community that has a mission or a focus or a purpose, and your events are shaped around helping your community with that mission. And then also each event to be very purposeful. So every event that I'm doing with clients, I'm saying, does this really need to be live? Do we need to be flying all these people in? How can we sort of slice, dice, and change up things so that some of it can be delivered virtually and some of it can be live? So that's sort of my thinking now. And commercially viable or compelling. So it doesn't necessarily need to be commercial, because not all events are commercial. Some events, depending on your strategy. So for example, I've worked with a number of publishing houses. Ultimately, their revenues are from advertising and from subscriptions. Events play a brand awareness, a branding, a sort of an increase of their subscriptions. They play a slightly different purpose, so they don't necessarily need to be commercial. So that's why I say commercial or compelling. So it's got to be content's got to be compelling or commercially viable, or one or both is great. So there are two sort of main revenue streams around events. The first one is attendance. So that's people that pay fees to attend, delegate fees, attendance fees to attend. And the second one is sponsorship. Sponsorship can come in various different forms, but it's basically a company or an organization pays a fee to access your audience, a fee to engage with your audience, and a fee to get leads through your audience. So it's basically access to it's a delivery of an audience. There's quite a lot of misunderstanding for event organizers around sponsorship, and there's a huge challenge around actually accessing that money. And it's actually because there's a bit of a misunderstanding as to what it is and what the expectation is. So that's essentially it. It's buyers and sellers, understanding who the buyers are and who the sellers are. Typically your event will deliver the buyers, and then your sponsorship will be the sellers, if that makes sense. So it's a buy-sell sort of relationship. So unlocking revenues typically looks like this. So, so for attendance, it's really important to be able to deliver value, understanding the value that your delegates are looking for. So the mission focused, the purposeful and the compelling, or the commerciality comes in here. You should be able to define your target audience. There's quite a few clients that I speak to that are a little bit unclear about who their audiences are. Who are your who is it that attends your events? What do they look like? What do they sound like? How do you articulate them? So that's the demographics: male, female, certain age, unemployed, employed, middle class, inner London, outer London. What's the geo breakdown? Where do the people come from? Who are they? What do they do for a living? It's just defining the target market. And there are all sorts of different ways that you can do that. So demographics is one. Some can be defined by behavior. So are they fans? Are they raving fans? Are they, there's all sorts of different ways that you can describe a target market, but you have to be able to articulate the target market. And then once you've been able to articulate the target market, it's then understanding what their needs are. And then you can either understand what their needs are by just knowing them and just being able, some publishers, they sort of know their subscribers, they understand their market. So that knowledge is already there. But if you're sort of, you're just developing events, or you're constantly got evolving new people joining, it's quite useful to be able to do some research. And there's all sorts of different types of research. Well, there's actually just two types of research. It's why have I forgotten what the different types of research is? Qualitative and quantitative research. So quantitative research is typically surveys where you just ask a series of questions, send out to your database, you get the answers, and then you analyze the data, and then you get to understand what's going on, what they want, what they find important, ask all sorts of different questions. The surveys are brilliant, but the actual magic bullet is doing qualitative research. That's phone research. So you may ask those same questions, but over the phone, record the answers, and then you then have quite an interesting insight from the industry. And then it's from that you then build out your content, hence the compelling content. So typically most conference organizers that sort of charge quite hefty fees, at least sort of £1,000 to £2,000 per person, this would typically be their approach, because it's a huge investment for the venue and all of the different costs associated with delivering a large scale conference. So they tend to do that sort of interrogation with the industry to just find out and make sure that their events are hitting on the right parts, and that actually that is what the audience want, and that's what's going to get them to leave their offices and attend, or switch on their computer and attend. So getting under the needs of the marketplace is absolutely game changing if you can do that, and therefore your content will reflect what you've been told. The language, everything you use is a reflection on what they've told you. So, you're going to resonate with them if you get that right. So a large part of my work has been sort of research and understanding, getting under different industries and being able to write compelling content that attracts them. So yeah, these are essentially the 3 or 4 things. If you get this right, will unlock those revenues, where attendance is concerned. With regards to sponsorship, again, it's about the audience. If you can articulate who gathers at your events in terms of the demographics, then you're right, and there's a match with the prospect organization's ideal client base, then that is the beginnings of being able to have a sponsorship conversation. So if you know, for example, that you deliver an event that delivers 150 CEOs of FTSE 100 companies at an annual CEOs Leadership Forum, that's pretty ideal information to be able to reach out to organizations that want to reach CEOs of FTSE 100 companies, because you can deliver that, you've got the track record, and they'll be able to have access to that audience. That's essentially what sponsorship is. And as I said, you can articulate your audience through avatars, what we call avatars, personas. Is quite a term used in marketing. Avatars, personas is how you're able to articulate the different types of people that attend your events. Because with an audience breakdown, you may have 3 or 4 or even 5 different types of people that attend your events. Hence, you have an avatar or persona for each type of person. So be able to define the event audience is absolutely game changing. Again, if you can articulate that and you know that those companies, that's their ideal client, that's who they want as potential clients, then as I said, that's going to really get them interested and they'll really want to speak to you. And then it's also about creating the opportunity for exposure, because those companies are looking to, they're looking to get more clients, they're looking to lead generate, they're looking to get more, build brand awareness. So your event should create opportunities to be able to create exposure. So, and that exposure, I've done quite a few videos on this, is in 3 areas: visibility and branding. So that's the logo plastered everywhere, or some kind of branding in different branded placements, they call it, video material being played to the audience, this kind of thing. Access to the audience is all about speaking opportunities, being able to do workshops, being able to do sit on panels, things like that, interacting with the audience so that you, as a thought leader, you're able to share your expertise. And lead generation. Lead generation typically sits being able to network, so being able to have a stand somewhere where they can there's loads of footfall and have lots of people kind of coming past their stand where they can exchange business cards. So those are the sort of 3 main areas. So visibility and branding, which is sort of like a hospitality style setup. So typically in conferences, we'll get quite a few sponsors that may want to sponsor a speaker dinner or a delegate lunch or something like this, where they're branding and they may have a speech there and an opportunity to address the audience. Access to an audience, as I said, is a presentation, a keynote presentation or a workshop or something like one-on time. So you may even add on one-to-one meetings. That's also quite a premium addition to your sponsorship package, being able to create one-to-one meetings. And then lead generation in the form of a presence within a show or an expo or some kind of event where they're able to network and exchange business cards. And then the way forward, as I've sort of alluded to, it's going to be, I've written about this before, as I've said, and been published in the conference and meetings world, just a different way of doing business. And this whole concept of building community or building your tribe, according to the binding interest of what I call the binding interest of a community, really understanding what is the beating heart of that community, what do they want, what are their needs, and how does your events or any aspects of your content serve them. So being able to serve a community or a tribe. There is this reality of the hybrid multi-channel or omni-channel events. I think it's going to be loads of fun producing those. But then you can still have pure virtual and pure live, but then where the opportunity for hybrid events comes in is where you might have an international audience that might not want to travel or may not be comfortable traveling if we're talking about the next 6 or 8 months, and then those people can come online. Also for us as organizers, we can now access amazing speakers. So for example, the Economist Group just confirmed Bill Gates. We would never have ever got Bill Gates in a million years. But online, these people are now accessible. So the hybrid formula means that you can actually go big and invite people you probably would never get, but because they can just press a button and just click on online, they don't have to move, you're more likely to get them. And then there's this opportunity because of that to develop compelling monetization strategies. So how do you monetize your content over and above events? I mean, how can you, there's this whole thing of repurposing events. So a webinar, for a 2-hour webinar, for example, can be turned into an e-course or a newsletter, or it's this repurposing content that's created and creating new avenues and repurposing that. So there's clever different things that you can do with repurposing content and then monetizing that and charging for that, and then building out, associated with the community, the membership the membership economic model. That a number of event organizers are moving into that. Publishers are already there, they've got that advantage, but event organizers will have never have considered that, but there's the need for that transition to create different economic models, largely based on subscriptions. So what that would mean, what that might look like is for a typical event organizer that might do 4 events in any one year, 4 live events in any one year, those may turn into 1 or maybe even 2 live events, 1 virtual, a couple of newsletters, and yeah, to just give you an example, all of that content can be repurposed into 3 or 4 different, what I call interactions throughout the year, as opposed to a standalone for 4 events, 4 live events. I think that's it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Michelle. It's really, really helpful.
Very helpful.
Took me back to my my previous days of selling sponsorship for big conferences, and my business used to say, if it moves, you can sponsor it. If it doesn't move, if it doesn't move, you can still sponsor it.
Typical.
Lots of interesting opportunities. But thank you, Michelle. Really, really helpful. Great time now to ask any of those burning questions. Please do unmute yourself and jump in, or if you've got any mic issues, just feel free to use that chat box and I can ask it for you. But if anyone's got a question now, please wave at me. Simon Fordham, first in with the waving.
Hi, Sophie. Thank you very much. Michelle, thank you so much for that. That was really interesting and lovely to see you again after a number of years, I think. I'm really interested in the hybrid model. So I'm chair of the Association of Business Mentors, and we missed last year's conference season, obviously because of the pandemic. But we're going full force for a September conference this year. But like you said, we're looking at the hybrid model because we're a national organisation. We're not convinced that people will want to travel as much as they did previously, and also we have an international audience now, so that's an interesting aspect. So I just wanted to talk really and ask you a question about the pricing models for hybrid versus face-to-face. Should you charge the same ticket price? Should they be different ticket price? And how do you justify that to your market?
I think you're going to ask that. Someone always has to ask about pricing. Yes,
I'm sorry.
It's a massive bugbear. No, but it is a bugbear. It's been a real scratch head moment in our sector. Do we charge more, the same, or less? And I've known examples of all 3. Some have gone completely free to literally lead generate. It's definitely a strategic question, an approach, but it's ultimately about value, and you have to ask your audience, what would they pay for? Just ask them, what would you pay? Would you pay? So make sure you've got the audience there to come online. And then you have to work out, are we going up, or are we going down, or are we staying the same? And then you work out it's a value for value thing. Are you giving them more value than the live experience? Or are you taking away more than if they were in the room? So, and then the price will fluctuate accordingly. So it's ultimately about that. What's in your mind, and also looking at what your competitors are doing. I will also look at that and see what else is out there and try and give them more value. Sometimes we think that we can just copy and paste a live event onto online, and it doesn't quite work that way. There are some things that translate better into live, but not everything does. So it's about cherry picking the best bits of the live experience and streaming that online, and then giving them something more. So for example, with the Economist Group at the moment, we're working out those fillers where we know in the live experience where a number of delegates are going to be networking and doing their thing live. Well, what do the virtual delegates do? They're staring at a blank screen. It's boring. So we're actually creating a program of fillers, what we call fillers, you know, which is sort of interesting videos or, you know, fantastic interviews with people that we would never ever get live, you know, people like that we couldn't get live, that's still very interesting, is really valuable. So yeah, think about that sort of, you know, it's ultimately about value. If you're delivering the same value online as you were live, and that's quite possible because you're adding all these different elements, then you can justify the same price, basically. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Michelle.
All right.
Fantastic. Editor, do you have a question?
Yes, and thank you very much. Again, thank you for having me here. I apologize if I'm asking a silly question, but you know, I'm hearing about hybrid first time, and I'm just thinking about it. I don't think I'm still quite clear what it is actually, because you know, when we talk about events, can't you do events using Zoom? And so what's so special about hybrid, and what it is actually in a simple station?
Okay, so let me answer your first question about can't we do everything on Zoom? So Zoom is very much, so say for example, you wanted to, you're at an expo, the sort of 3D platforms create a different format experience. So at an expo, for example, you rock up to an exhibition stand and you meet that person at that stand and you exchange business cards. They give you a brochure and you walk away onto the next person.
Yeah.
You can't really do that with Zoom, but with all of the, because it's quite kind of one-dimensional, we can have meetings, we can have breakouts, we can go off into different groups, but the exchange of information and also the branding opportunity, it disappears with Zoom. You're not able to create sort of digital backdrops, for example, and then also you're not able to pass on information. Whereas in the virtual, what we call the virtual world, the 3D world, with some of these other platforms, you can. So it's like you literally create the 3D experience of walking into an exhibition and walking around an exhibition, around exhibition stands, tapping on someone's shoulder, downloading their information, having a video call. So that's the difference between the virtual platforms and Zoom. It's the 2D versus the 3D. Hybrid is, if you can imagine, Question Time. Do you watch Question Time?
Can I stop you there? Because I actually thought just now that you're actually talking about hybrid, but what you just said, that's the separate thing. That's the 3D, right? Online.
Yeah, that's explaining the different online platforms and what they all offer. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to answer that first. Yeah. Is that all right? Did you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Brilliant. And then you asked about hybrid, what hybrid is. Do you watch Question Time? Something like Question Time? Have you watched Question Time or X Factor?
Yeah, Millionaire.
So, for example, like on TV, you'll watch a production where you've got the TV studio and the presenters, and then you've got the audience in the studio, right? And then you've got us watching on TV. So you've got you've got the live audience in the studio, and then watching as things are happening, and then you've got us. It's been streamed to our TVs, and we're in our houses watching it on TV. Okay. Yeah, that's what happens with a TV production. That's what a hybrid event is. That's what a hybrid event will be.
Okay, so me watching X Factor and then someone else watching. Sorry, I don't think I
yeah, so in a hybrid scenario, there's two people. There's you who's watching from home, watching the same event from home. And then there's me in the audience in person at the event with watching a presentation or whatever, and you're watching it at home at the same time.
I guess now I'm trying to, because I'm organizing events, and obviously because of COVID, you can't really do face-to-face events, as we all know. So this would be something interesting. You know, this would be something interesting. But I'm trying to work out in my head how can, because you know we've got construction going on. We used to be we very much involved with construction, so we organize events for construction when we invite employers, they're doing interviews, and then straight away they're taking students into job opportunities. But normally what I would do, it would work like a speed dating kind of thing, you know, the students would be sitting in the middle, and then I would have employers sitting around, and then every single learner would be seen by employer one by one, so every one of them would have this kind of opportunity. Now I had this idea of using actually Zoom facilities where I would put students there, and probably I would place students into different rooms.
You can do that. Yep.
So now you're telling me about hybrid and 3D, and I kind of like it, but I'm trying to understand, and I'm trying to picture, you know, what I'm doing currently with.
Let's have a follow-up.
Yeah, I was going to say, can I suggest you two catch up afterwards, because it sounds like there's lots of
that would be nice,
support.
actually.
Let's have a one-to-one, definitely.
Sorry,
and I can explain. That's all right. That's all right. Yeah, that's true, because I assume that people understood what hybrid is, but yeah, it's just, you think about a TV production, that's essentially where we're going in terms
Michelle,
of hybrid.
I've got one, if I may.
Yeah.
How can businesses seeking sponsorship for their events or their series of events stand out? Because there will be, let's take a bank, for example. Say you wanted to present your audience to a bank for sponsorship. There will be hundreds, if not thousands, of businesses all trying to put themselves forward for that same pot of money. How can a small business stand out from the crowd and really present its audience and present that they should spend their sponsorship monies with them?
Yeah, that's a good question, because there's this typically banks, and obviously the consultancies get approached quite a lot. One, it's timing, because they have, you know, set amount of money for a set amount of time, so work out sort of when their year ends are. And sort of how much of the budget has been spent and things like that. So it's good to get them early before they've made any plans around how they're going to spend the money. Build relationships is ultimately the best thing. You have to build the relationship. Don't expect to, I've had clients say to me, oh, well, you know, I don't know if they're going to come on board. They want to come to the event. I'm not sure if I'm going to let them come. I was like, why not? That's part of the shopping around and them coming to see what's involved. It's just like with any business transaction, they might not buy first time around. You've got to build the relationship. And also you've got to prove yourself. So sometimes that might mean saying to them, come to the event this year, see what it's like, get the experience, and typically they will come on board next time. So yeah, I think to have the approach of building the relationship with them and nurturing a relationship with them under the understanding that they might not buy straight away, but it's about building that and nurturing that, and then understanding what they want. You know, you have to understand what they want and where they're going and whether your audience is what they want. And then don't be really rigid around set packages. Just ask them what they want. That's what I do. I say, you know, so how do you normally, you know, lead generate or build your brand or create brand awareness? And I keep my mouth shut and then let them tell me, because then you can build a bespoke package that suits them. So find out that you make sure your audience matches their audience or their ideal clients, build the relationship and work and figure out what it is that they want. And then say to them that this event can really give you what they want, what you want.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Actually, I was going to add something else. Think outside the box as well. If they say, I've had this before where clients will say, oh, we really want to address this audience by doing X, Y, Z, and it's not really in your agenda, then create create it for them. Create, if that means that's the exposure that they want, that's the type of exposure that they want. Be creative and think about how you can add that to your agenda or add it to your event or something like that. And the other thing I was going to say, which is also largely overlooked, is third-party hosting and white label events as well. So what I mean by that is, you, for example, Sophie, is creating exactly the same type of event that you've done today, but it's hosted by X company. So you've done an event dedicated for them, about them, and you've marketed it, trying to attract exactly the people that you know that they want, showcasing them and giving them the exposure that they want. That's a hugely overlooked piece that corporates and companies will pay for if they know that you can deliver. So there's a sponsorship of an existing event, but then there's also the development of dedicated events for them and by them, because they know that you take away the headache of organising something specifically, and they know you can deliver that audience. They don't have to go anywhere else. So.
Fantastic. And just unless anyone else has got, I've got so many questions, but I'll keep it just to one more from me, and then I'll let you all network and spread the love. But do you think certain organisations are getting bored with the standard sponsorship option? So putting your logo in a certain place, and I'm sure we all can think of events where it's been fairly vanilla. I mean, there was one of the events I did, we offered to put branding above the urinals in the toilets of this massive exhibition centre.
Wow.
It was a company
shameless
that dealt in legacy risk. So they were literally taking waste away from a business. So it was a little bit creative, a bit different. But yeah, do you think people are getting bored of the sort of the standard sponsorship packages?
Yes and no. It really works. In some sectors, it just absolutely works, and there'll be some sectors like oil and gas and stable sectors like that they're the same sponsors as sponsored an event for absolutely donkey's years, because it works, it brings them clients, and it brings them the visibility. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But having said that, in some, I think it's always about thinking about how you can always be creative and evolve and be different. And if that kind of logo placement doesn't work, it's a bit old fashioned, then change it and do something else. Give them something that's a little bit more subtle. They probably don't want the shameless kind of parading of plastering one's logo everywhere. But okay, well, if you don't want that, well, what else can we do? Is it that you just might want to have something a little bit more sophisticated, and it's working out different things that you can do other than visible branding? Yeah, so there's lots of other things that you can do other than the actual